Hey, friend, what if I told you that in all the years I've been teaching music and been involved in music education, what if the way we've been thinking about practice has been all wrong? Or maybe not all wrong, but maybe we need to modify how we talk about practice, how we think about practice, and most importantly, how we teach our students to practice. This podcast episode is sort of spurred from a conversation I had this week with a friend of mine who uh, made a statement that I've heard a lot recently from parents of students that I teach, or just people. Whenever they find out that I'm a music educator, one of the first things they tell me is, "Oh man, you teach guitar. That's awesome. I used to take lessons and now I don't because I just didn't practice. I didn't get any better. I just didn't enjoy it, didn't really get along with the teacher, a variety of reasons." And it always comes back to how we think about practice. And so today, what I want to do is outline a new way of thinking about how we practice our instruments, and also how we should teach it to our students so that ultimately they gain a lifelong love of music and playing their instruments. And so, in this episode of the KF Music Studio podcast, we're going to dive into sort of 5 ideas I have to rethink the way we teach practicing. And maybe this will spur you, if you tried to play an instrument before, maybe these new lines of thinking will really help you get back into music, which is ultimately the goal, right? Like, I believe music is for everybody. And I think it's all about what your goals are. And so when we're talking about unlocking how we practice and just a new way of thinking about it, the first thing I think we need to do is we just need to evaluate what our goals are on the instrument that we're learning or that we're playing. And we need to align our practicing with those goals, right? Like, if my goal is to let's say I'm a high school student. I'm a high school sophomore, and I've been playing guitar for 3, 4, 5 years. And my goal is I want to go to college to study music at the next level. I want to get my bachelor's in music. Like, that's my profession. I want to get better at that. Well, my practice goals are going to be a lot more intense, right? Because there's a lot of things that you need to know to be able to teach music, to be able to do it professionally. There's a lot that goes into that that a lot of times we don't always think about. And so, if your goal is to go to college to study music, yeah, you need to be spending half hour, 45 minutes, an hour a day. You need to be constantly learning new music and practice technical exercises so that you're prepared for the challenges. That's a specific case, but I feel like as a music teacher, looking at myself, I wonder if I've taught every student I've had with those goals, but maybe not every student has those goals. Maybe if I think about evaluating the goals that every student I have has, maybe their goals are they just want to play a couple of songs on their instrument, they want to know a few chords, and they just want to enjoy it. They want to serve in their church, or they want to play for kids ministry, or they just want to have a little bit of understanding about music. Their goals should be different than somebody who's trying to actively get into being a professional musician. And so I've been struck by this over the last couple of years, been really thinking about it and really listening to my students and where they're at, where their goals are. And I just think that there's been, in my personal teaching career, and maybe in yours, there's been a disconnect where I'll tell them, hey, like, I want you to practice a half hour a day, 4 to 5 days a week. And yeah, that sounds great to me. And that's sort of the way when I took lessons, that's how it was approached for me is, you got to spend at least a half hour. That's the minimum. It's not uncommon to spend an hour plus. And that was for me because that was my goal. My goal was to study music at the next level and to do this for a living. But so many students I have, their goals are just to play a couple of songs, and their goals, they don't have a half hour to play. So there's a disconnect. And then what happens is I keep pushing them, or worse, they keep pushing themselves, and they feel like they're never getting enough time in, that they're not progressing the way that they need to. And so they end up dropping and they drop their instrument. They say, well, I can't commit the time to do what I'm being told I need to do. So I'm not going to play it anymore. And that to me is really the saddest part of a lot of these conversations I have with friends of mine and parents of students that I teach is people who were interested in music, but you can see over the years, due to external factors, such as maybe feeling shameful that they didn't get as much practice in, that they drop the love of music and then they just don't play anymore. And that's really sad because I truly believe that music is for everybody. And even if your goals are just to learn a few songs, few chords, just to understand a little bit about music, right? Music is for you. Music is for everybody. And so my first thought when I think about a new way of practicing, number one, we got to evaluate the goals on our instrument and we need to align our practicing. So if you're a hobbyist, let's say you have a regular job, as most of us do, and your thought is, man, I just want to do this as a little hobby. Well, your practice goals maybe should be a couple times a week for 10 to 15 minutes. And we'll talk about how to structure that 15 minutes a little bit later, but your goals should be aligned with what you actually like. Your practice should be aligned with your goals, right? So, obviously, the more you play your instrument, it's the same as everything else in life. The more you do it, the better you get at it. But if our goals aren't aligned, then we feel frustrated when we can't get to as much practice as we want. Or worse, our music teacher makes us feel bad that we didn't get as much practice in when this just doesn't fit in our life. And so, the best analogy I can use of this is I think about going to the gym. So, I've been going to the gym the last year or so, a little over a year. Actually, oh my goodness, it's been almost a year and a half now. And my goals at the gym are different than a lot of other people's who go to the gym. Like for me, it's just I want to feel like I'm a little bit stronger. I know that my body tends to hurt when I don't stretch and when I don't lift and when I don't have the strength to get through the day. And I don't want my legs and feet to hurt as I get older. So my exercising is in line with that. I have no illusions that I'm going to go train for a half marathon. Though there was 3 days in November of this year that we kind of talked about doing a half marathon because we did a 10K in November. Thankfully, we ended up not doing it. But like my exercise routine has to fit what my goals are. My goals are just to continue to just be healthy and to have good heart health and to feel like my body can move and I can do the things that I want to do. But I'm not training for a half marathon. And if I try to do it, I'm going to end up being frustrated. And then worse, I'm going to feel guilty when I don't get to the gym as much as I want. And I feel like that's how it is in music. Like it's almost, especially when people pay to take lessons, they're like, man, I'm paying this money, I'm paying for somebody's time, but I'm not hitting the goals that are being given to me because they're not my goals. And so for music teachers and for this is for anybody who is starting to try to get back into playing music or has always wanted to, which by the way, I've never once had a conversation when I talk to anybody. This has never happened before. When I tell people that I teach music, and I tell people I'm a guitar teacher and teach piano and drums and all that good stuff, I never once have somebody say, "Oh, you play guitar?" Man, I never wanted to learn guitar. I can't imagine spending the time with that. It's quite the opposite, in fact. Every time I tell people I teach guitar, that's usually the first response I get is, "Oh man, I've always wanted to learn." And so I want you to think about aligning your goals on the instrument with your practice time because I want you to get on that success train. If you practice, if you can commit to 10 to 15 minutes 3 times a week, just I'm going to get that bare minimum and I'm going to practice the way I need to. You're going to see results and you're going to love it. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to do it for your whole life. And that's the goal, right? As a music teacher, my best compliment is when a student says, "I just love music now. Like I enjoy playing my instrument. I enjoy getting a little better each time I play and I may not want to be a professional musician, but I do want to play as much as I can." And so that's what I want for you. That's what I want for me. So let's think about evaluating the goals that somebody has with the practicing and let's get those in sync. And so the second thing is, I believe that every time you pick up your instrument, you should have a good balance of practicing and playing. Let me break that down. Practicing is a specific goal, it's a specific skill that you don't know, or that you don't know very well, or don't know as well as you want to. So you work on it so you get better and better. That's practicing. And yes, that should be a part of your practice routine. It should be a part of my practice routine. Every time I pick up my instrument, I should feel like I'm getting better and better at my instrument. But music is also supposed to be fun, right? Like, so if I'm only practicing, if I'm only working on getting better, man, that's hard after a while. It's hard to feel like you're a beginner at something. It's hard to see your progress on the micro level. Like, you'll see it on the big picture, but you might not always see it day to day, practice session to practice session. All right. So I want you to balance your practice and your playing. So here's how I structure my practice time. It actually leads us to number three here, which is I want you to keep your practicing in short bursts with a specific goal. I'm thinking, honestly, 10 to 15 minutes. All right. So let's say your goal is I've never played guitar before and I want to get into it. You can go to kfmusicstudio.com and join my waitlist for a course that's coming out very soon. And if you've already watching this after the course has come out, man, check out the description. You can get on the waitlist. You can get the course. I believe it's going to help you because I think that this course kind of exemplifies everything that we're going to talk about in that course. And so I want to help you be a guitar player. But I digress. So if your goal is, I just want to learn to play the G chord, right? Well, then your first few minutes are just, where do I put my fingers? Got to get my fingers in the right spot. I'm going to try to practice. I'm going to try to play the chord, right? My specific goal is one chord. Now, I'm only going to spend 3 to 5 minutes playing that. I'm going to play the chord, take my hand off, come back, play the chord again, and slowly work on it, right? But then, as you get better and better, and as you're learning new skills, I want you to keep going back and playing some of the things that you really enjoy. That's what music should be. It should be enjoyed. It should be fun. It should be something that it's not I have to do this. It's something that, man, I really enjoy doing this. This is a nice little break from my job or my school or whatever that is. So I believe you should structure your practice time 10, 15, 20 minutes, somewhere in that range. Doesn't mean you have to cap it at 20 minutes. So let's say you say, I'm going to set 15 minutes. It doesn't mean if, like, once the timer is done, you have to set your guitar down. That's just like the floor. That's the minimum. Hey, I'm going to commit to practice 15 minutes today. And half of that time, or 5, 10 minutes of that, should be practicing something new, should be working on maybe a little technical exercise to build finger strength to help you with the second part of your practice, which is to do something that you enjoy. There are 1,000 ways to teach a G chord and a D chord. There's 1,000 songs that use those two chords. So if you are a guitar player who wants to serve in your church, and you play a little bit, but not enough that you feel comfortable playing. Well, if you practice a classical song like Ode to Joy, that's not going to help you get to your goal. But if you practice, let's say, a verse of one worship song that you know your church does, and you just practice that, then what you are practicing is directly in line with your goal. Okay? So I didn't mention this in number one, but if you're watching this, that's your first step, is just, what are my goals on the instrument? Like, what do I want to do with this instrument? What are my ending goals? A question I like to ask my new students, and I actually ask this usually 3 or 4 times a year. We're coming up on, at the time of this recording, we're coming up on spring break. And after spring break is usually one of the times I check in with my students and I say, hey, from now until Memorial Day, this little 2-month, 3-month period, or now until summer, what are a couple things that you want to learn, that you want to get better at? And then I tie my instruction to exactly those goals. And I check in 3-4 times a year because I don't want to keep going down a path as our musical tastes change, as our goals change. I want to always make sure I'm right in line. So that's the first step, is you just got to get in line with, what are my goals? what do I want to do with this? And maybe you've never thought about that. And maybe as you think about it more, you're like, oh, that's kind of why I dropped playing music, because I didn't really have a goal, because um, I didn't have an ending goal in mind. And so today is the day. Like today, watching this is your sign. This is your chance to reevaluate that and say it's never too late. All right. This is a side tangent, but I believe this firmly that we tend to think as an adult that if we didn't start playing music at 5 years old, or if we didn't start playing piano at five, that it passed us by. And nothing could be more further from the truth. Like, I studied music at the university level, but I didn't start playing an instrument till I was a sophomore in high school. And even then, I just kind of played in my room. I didn't take it seriously. I didn't take any lessons. My first lesson was when I was a music major in college. That was my first lesson that I had ever taken. Before then, I had never taken a guitar lesson. I'd never taken a bass lesson. I just kind of wanted to play, and I just tried to play the stuff that I wanted to play. There was no order, there was no like sequence. Music is like a big puzzle. So it doesn't matter where you come in at, just jump in and start playing something, because you can always learn stuff on the back end. All right. So as we're thinking about the new ways of practicing, okay. So we've structured our practice time, short bursts, 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to balance that with some playing and some practicing. So we want to have that enjoyment, and then we also want to work on a little bit of something, little skill, because we do want to get better. Number four, I think, is a little tip for us is I think if we keep our instrument in a place that we can see it, then we will have more success in actually practicing it. Now, I am a professional musician. I've been blessed to do this in music and in ministry and education in this realm my whole life. So, for the last almost 20 years. And even myself, if I have my guitar sitting out where I can see it, I'm going to pick it up more. If it's in the case, I'm not going to get it out as much. And I'm a professional, and it's tough for me to do that. So I can only imagine if I'm a absolute beginner, that's even tougher. So I want to encourage you. Maybe if you put your guitar in a place, or put your keyboard in a place that it's always set up, it will be a lot easier to practice. I can promise you that. And so after we've done all of these things, the end of the day, when it comes to a new way to think about practicing, um, I want you and I to enjoy the practice of learning and getting better. Like, yes, it's important to have an end goal in mind. That is important. The destination of where we want to get is important. It helps keep us on track. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us encouraged that we're going the correct direction. However, it's not always about the destination, that it's actually about the journey. And so every successful business owner I've talked to, or every book I've read, everybody who's lost a lot of weight or has accomplished something great, they always talk about falling in love with the process of getting better, not the result. Because if you enjoy the process of daily or weekly getting a little better, if you can fall in love with that process, then that, even though the destination goal will shift, even though the goalposts will move, if you fall in love with the process, then you'll achieve those goals, and it won't be a burden to you. It will be a blessing to you. It will be something that you look forward to doing. So I want you and I to enjoy the process of making music and getting better. By the way, I don't think that's just a music thing. I think that's an everything thing. If you're talking about going to the gym, if you're going talk about like trying to eat better, if you're talking about trying to improve your spiritual life, or trying to pour into your relationships, or try to build a business, all of that, fall in love with the process of it. Now, just like falling in love, it doesn't mean that we are in love with it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No, there's going to be times when you're not into it. But if you can, that's where the discipline takes over, I think. Like, I don't feel like doing this today, but I know it's important. So I'm going to do it because I know I'm going to feel good afterwards. Right? I talk a lot about getting on the success train. And I think that's true in every avenue of life, but definitely in music, man. When you can get on that success train and you start to see how the little bit of practice you put in every day every week, a few times a week, if you start to see that enjoyment and see yourself getting better, then what will happen is you'll want to get better. And so sometimes I call this the spiral, right? Like you get better at music, so you practice something and you get better. So it allows you to play something a little bit more challenging. So when you play something a little bit more challenging, it helps you to grow. As you grow, you can play something a little bit more challenging. And eventually you just spiral into a real love and enjoyment of the process of making music. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for me, is to just fall in love with every day I get to play my instrument. And, as I think back on my musical journey, I realized that the one thing that drew me to music, to being a musician, was whenever I play music, like nothing else matters. Like when I'm playing, that is the only thing that matters in that time. So I can't control anything. Can't control a lot of my life. Like I can't control what happens to me. I can't control the weather. I can't control how other people act, how other people do. In a lot of cases, I can't really control my job. But I can control my instrument. I can control the music. I can play it. I can enjoy it. I can go through the process of getting better. And so I think if we can approach our practice time in this way, I truly believe that every person watching this can rediscover their joy of making music. As long as we can evaluate what my goals are, evaluate what your goals are, and I want you to align your practice with those goals. I want you to have a good balance in every practice session of playing and practicing. I want you to keep your practicing in short bursts, 10, 15, 20 minutes, super practical. Maybe you only have 5 minutes. That's okay. 5 minutes is better than nothing. So don't think that it's not a all or nothing. It's practice what you can. If it's only 5 minutes, play 5 minutes. If you play 10 minutes and you want to keep going, keep playing. Like, remember, that's the floor, that's the minimum. The fourth thing I want you to think about is to keep your instrument in a spot where you can see it, where it's easily accessible on a stand or on a hook on the wall. I want you to think about where it is so you can grab it easily. And then I just want you to enjoy the process of learning and getting better. That for you, your goals might be, I just want to be a hobby player. That's awesome. Do that, get better at it, play some songs, and you'll reach a spot where you may not know everything, but you know enough to make it enjoyable for you. And that's the goal. Music should be enjoyed, and I want you to get better. So I hope that this has been super helpful for you, super practical. I want you to leave me a comment wherever you're seeing this. Let me know which new way of thinking about practice has helped you the most. And I believe if we all approach music this way, we will not only get better, but we're going to enjoy it. We're going to fall in love with the process even more. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are, if you don't mind to like, share, subscribe this, because I really believe that this can change somebody's life, changing our focus on practicing. All right. This has been another episode of the KF Music Studio podcast. My name is Kevin. I am the KF in KF Music Studio. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. And I hope that you are blessed today. And I can't wait to see you on the next one. So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.